Hi guys, in this video we're going to look at how to construct a pedigree. Firstly, going to talk about what a pedigree is, then some of the symbols used in the legend of a pedigree, and I'm going to construct an example pedigree. Now firstly, a pedigree is basically a family tree. It uses symbols and it's an easy way to track hereditary traits throughout a family. Now, an hereditary trait is one that is passed from generation to generation, so therefore has some sort of genetic basis. You might do a pedigree for tracking a disease through the family, working out where that disease might have come from or started, or you might do it looking for other people in the family that could be affected by that disease. Now, we don't always have to do it for a disease, and the one that I do shortly as an example is not going to be for a disease but another genetic trait. We use symbols where the male is a square and the female is a circle. Now, to show whether a person is affected or unaffected by that trait, the affected people have coloured in shapes and the unaffected people have uncoloured in shapes, keeping to that square and circle as I said before. Now, in some cases you will have a carrier. A carrier is a person who has the genes for that trait, but that trait is not expressed. So if this is a recessive gene, that's not going to be expressed, but there can be a carrier of that. Now, you're not always going to know if somebody's a carrier. You may need to do a couple of test crosses or a monohybrid cross to work out whether those parents or offspring are going to be carriers. It's not always something that's labelled, so just keep that in mind. Now, your pedigree should always have a legend. So it'll have something like this in the corner to show which symbols you're using. There are other symbols and you can get fairly complicated with the pedigrees, but these are the basic symbols. What I'm going to do now is construct a pedigree based on my family and a genetic trait that is in my family being a widow's peak, which is a hairline that comes down to a point in the centre. I'm going to start with my father, who does not have a widow's peak, and my mother, who does have a widow's peak. And you'll see that my father is on the left-hand side. We always put males on the left-hand side and females in a marriage on the right-hand side. Now, to show that my mother and father are married, we're going to put a line between them. And there are other lines that you can use to show that if they're separated or divorced or one of them's deceased, but we're not going to worry about any of that stuff. Again, that's getting into the complicated stuff. We're going to keep it as simple as possible. We then show children below that line. So on the next slide down, coming from the line between the marriage, with the eldest on the left-hand side and the youngest on the right-hand side. So here we have myself, who has a widow's peak, being the eldest, my little brother who does not have a widow's peak, and my little sister. Now, it's important to plan your pedigree out because you may need to move people around for marriages. So for example, I am married, but there's not enough room to fit my wife on the right hand side of me there. So what I'm going to have to do is move my brother and sister out a little bit so that I can get my wife in. I'll now add in my children, my son who has a widow's peak and my daughter who does not. Once we've got our symbols down, we can then label those symbols. And we label generations with Roman numerals. So starting at the top, we have 1, my generation 2, and my children's generation, the 3rd generation. We can then label individuals using normal Aramaic numbers from left to right. There we go. So we can talk about now, obviously all these people have names and I know their names, but if you don't know the names, you can very easily talk about different individuals by using this code. So for example, my little brother, who does not have a widow's peak, is generation 2, number 3. In this video, we have talked about pedigrees, which are family trees showing a genetic trait that affects the family. We've talked about the symbols that are used, males being squares, females being circles, and that all pedigrees should have a legend showing those symbols. We then went through the rules of constructing a pedigree. In a marriage, the male is on the left, the female is on the right. Children are shown on the next line down. from eldest to youngest, left to right, and generations labelled with Roman numerals, and individuals labelled with standard Aramaic numbers. Thanks for watching, guys. Peace out.